All right, last talk before lunch break, no pressure.
Yeah, we're going to try to make it short, but it's going to be long. So welcome to the talk with a weird title. David is going to go into that later.
Maybe.
But that's a complimentary talk to the workshop we gave yesterday on how you can use Copilot to improve websites accessibility. So there's going to be lots of hot takes on accessibility and AI and bias. I think we can start with that.
And none of those hot takes and nothing we say is representative of our companies, which is GitHub. It's all our own views, so do not blame GitHub for any awful things we're about to tell you.
Yeah, the curious fact is that David and I work together. So I'm a retired front-end engineer. I got burned out and started to do product design. And I work with David at GitHub Copilot team.
Yeah, and I'm an engineer and work with ALENA. And ALENA is a white woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, a black top, and white pants.
As you can see, but not everyone can see me, so I will describe Dave too. He's a tall, white Canadian man. I think we can start with the talk, and we will try to describe images. However, it's not very important.
Yeah. So I want to start by drawing attention to the most important aspect of accessibility work. And that's the direct involvement and contributions of the daily users of assistive technology. Nothing should be decided and done without the participation of people that rely on these technologies.
I want to touch on a very common concept, which is usability and accessibility. I get this question a lot, and this is a good representation for me of what is usability. That's an elevator on the left side, so it's nice to have it. It's just very handy, but not everyone can use that. It's not required by law as the elevator on the right side. So it's actually something that you have to have in each building. It's nice to have both, but only one of them is for everyone. So everyone with a temporary disability, which can be someone carrying a baby or a wheelchair, can only use the one on the right side. So it's accessibility. And to go deeper into definition, there is a process of building the website. So accessibility is the result of this inclusive process where we think about people regardless of their ability, education level, background, and technology they're using.
Yes, so disability is context dependent. It's not just about a specific health issue or aging. A person can be temporarily disabled, or a person can be impacted by societal structures. People with disabilities are a diverse group. There are visible disabilities and invisible disabilities, such as neurodivergence. In addition, factors such as sex, age, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, race, economic situations, these all affect a person's life experiences and their health needs. And we should be working to remove these barriers in the technologies we are building. And this is from the National Academy of the Sciences. Disability is not inherent in an individual, but is rather a relational concept, a function of the interaction of a person with the social and physical environments. So let's compare how many of us work with our 16-inch Apple Silicon MacBook Pros connected to like big-ass screens and perfect lighting, and how an end user might be engaging with our content. They could be in poor lighting conditions, I like that clever hack, or maybe they're on a 7-year-old phone on a really slow network. And ALENA did some interviews with some users and some developers. And here's a quote from one: "Having a disability is not something to be ashamed of, and euphemisms deny the existence of disability and reinforce the stigma surrounding it, rather than accepting it as a valuable aspect of diversity." And I'm sure many of us in our jobs have prioritized new features ahead of making existing ones more accessible. Or at the very least, we've encountered this in our professional experiences, such as this anonymous developer said, when bringing up the topic of accessibility, I often encountered some resistance because it was considered too difficult to implement. There were other priorities or because no one was asking for it. Continuing, when I first started working, I had to change some code because it wasn't accessible. After that, I reviewed a lot more code for accessibility. I told my team what I had found, but nothing changed. So we're asking you guys to be the change, okay? Now there's 3 important questions you should ask yourself when you're tackling accessibility. Can users complete essential tasks using my product? Do people in my company understand what we are doing? And do I know what I'm doing, or do I need support? You might ask yourself these questions not about accessibility. That will be our talk next year about existential crises. But there are more accessible questions you should be asking yourself too. How can I apply an inclusive lens to my current metrics? How can I recognize and mitigate ableism when it occurs? Has my hiring process and internal materials been audited by an accessibility specialist? And many more are going to emerge.
Yeah, and touching on inclusive work environment, Slack actually has this feature which when you send a screenshot of, for example, if you work with front-end developer, of how the implementation turned out, you send the screenshot. A very good practice is to add a description to the images in Slack. It's a very hidden feature, but it has been useful for us because we work with accessibility specialists who are blind, so it's something that we have to do daily and we recommend.
Yeah, and another example is using automations like this bot at GitHub for discussions or PRs, and it's telling the users, hey, you should add a description to this image, or writing automated tests to check your own code that it's accessible. And now this is a fun one. We also need to consider the language that we're using. There are many terms in history that are regrettable in hindsight. And despite a few angry people with very loud voices, making language more inclusive does not hurt. GitHub and Git proper changed the default branch from master, a term that invokes slavery, to main. And there's so much more work to do. Terms like whitelist and blacklist are racist. Why not switch to allow list or block list? And terms like man hours and sanity check are gender exclusive and ableist respectfully. These can simply be swapped for more inclusive alternatives like work hours and confidence check. And these are just English terms, and all languages evolve. So this list that you're seeing here is just like a flashpoint in time. But we need to be open to these changes as well. And we also, and this is important, disability is not a monolith, but it's a spectrum existing through the lens of intersectionality, underlying conditions and social economic criteria. Between 25 and 40% of people with learning disabilities also experience mental health problems. Girls are diagnosed at a substantially lower rate, 4-to-1 ratio, and misdiagnosed due to different manifesting criteria or historical exclusion from the research process. And this will become important when we talk about AI models.
Which is now.
Which is now.
So I want to touch first on unconscious bias and conscious bias before jumping into AI bias. So unconscious bias is where you are not aware of the stereotypes and ideas that you impose over a minority. And that's due to your education or the surroundings. And the conscious bias is when you do that and you know what you're doing. So you use the stereotypes in maybe an offensive way. So the theory here is that we think that people who program AI and develop those data sets, they're probably unconsciously biased. So we don't think that's like evil developers who could do biased AI tools. The takeaway here is that AI is based on data sets, and the data sets reflect the most representative data. It's not the data that is representing minorities. We also know that algorithms provide inaccurate descriptions and predictions and discriminate against some of the groups. I went into extensive Google search, which is also AI-based, but I found many papers. And I think one of the most representative cases of AI bias is employment decision tools. So, for example, if an individual who has a visual disability have unusual eyes movement, the automated employment decision tools exclude them from the process automatically. So this and many other studies shows that AI is biased today, and it will going to take some time to get into a better stage. So to reduce disability bias in technology, we have to include disability data, and it has to be collected in a personal and respectful way. And there is a lot of time before we get there. And for now, we have a term which we use as in Microsoft, which is data desert. And that means that people with disability are not represented in the data sets. And to move to a better place in AI, there are two initiatives that I found. First one is IBM, AI Explainability 360, which is a tool, it's open source, and it improves the future of algorithm diversity and allows to mitigate discrimination by clearing out all of the data that is discriminational, essentially. And another tool is Microsoft AI that also improves transparency for minorities. So there are some good use cases for AI and disability. And first one is speech. So users can use voice control tools to have a better life quality. We also know that there are image descriptions that also help people to have a better everyday life by describing what they see. There is also cognition and movement, so AI can help with daily tasks, and with even robots and prosthetics is something that is very helpful. So this is one of the examples of the user who uses the iPhone and the AI tool to describe what they see in the city. We don't know if these descriptions are accurate or not, but it's definitely an improvement and life quality for the users. And another one is seeing the content of the fridge, and here is a woman with an iPhone as well, and AI would analyze what she has in the fridge and put the recipe for her. And it's a great example of AI tool improving life quality. If you have an application, Be My Eyes, installed in the phone, it would show you the option on each image where each image will be described for you by AI. And we also have to remember that to work with accessibility in web, we have to know our base before we combine that with AI. And our base is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which you probably know. It's a set of rules. It's very long. I would recommend to pay a lot of attention to that, because there is 260 days, I think, until European Accessibility Act becomes active. So I think it's 40 working weeks. And we can apply accessibility in 3 levels. I think the best way to think about this is the amount of barriers that we remove. So for level A, we remove just enough barriers. And level 3, so it's AAA, it's remove as many barriers as we can. And to think about guidelines and success criteria, because there is a lot of text in VCAC website. You don't want to go over everything. Guidelines are the set of, it's kind of lines on the road. It's okay if you go over them. It's just guiding you towards a solution, while success criteria is something that you don't want to be near. It's the absolute limit, and ignoring them is going to go into fine and lawsuits for your company. Also, VCAC is just the foundation. It's not the end of the accessibility, and meeting VCAC, it's not the same as making something accessible. So first we have to meet our base, and then go deeper and make something accessible by asking users if they are happy with the experience. There's interesting fact about new VCAC criteria that is coming out. I think it came out last year, but it's going to be effective in this European Accessibility Act. And those require manual testing. So tools like Copilot cannot catch any of this. For example, consistent help, where you have to ensure that you have contact information on every page. Dragging movements, so we have to provide an alternative action for users, not just dragging, so they will have to use a mouse or other input, so the dragging movement is not the only one. There is also target size, and we have to do that manually because target size can be increased by increasing target size or increasing the margin. So this will also count and as bigger control. Redundant entry. We don't like adding the same information twice. So this is actually a criteria now for accessibility, that we have to autocomplete information and not force people to introduce it twice, because that's problematic with some of the cognitive disabilities. Also, the focus not obscured rule, which shows you that if you have any focusable element behind something, like a cookie banner, it has not been obscured, because that's an issue with keyboard navigation, and you have to test that manually. And another one is focus appearance. There is a contrast ratio that have to be met, which is 3:1 relationship, and 2 CSS pixels thick, the focus ring. So we also have to work with it. In GitHub, we work with annotations. So as designers, we have responsibility to create special annotations to show the landmark or focus states, and we handle that to developers. So we ensure that accessibility is made early on the stage. And after something is implemented, we test it with experts to provide a special label that something is reviewed for accessibility. And this is one of the components in Primer design system that we use together with developers.
So Alena, that was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah. So I think we need to take a break and just think of our 3 favorite things instead of all of the work we have to do on our projects to make them accessible. So here's my dog. He's Rhizome. He's red and he's sticking his tongue out at me.
Oh, here's my cat. Fun fact, it's actually, he has disability. So he has 3 legs on the right side, and he waits for me in Valencia.
And obviously mustard. Mustard makes me more happy than anything, especially small batch artisanal mustards. If you have any suggestions for mustards in Alicante or Spain in general, please contact me directly. It's a big passion of mine. Now back to the real shit. A lot of what both Alena and I have spoken to previously, not our favorite things, not the mustard, can be assisted with by AI. So for example, you can just ask Copilot, how can I test the web for accessibility? And its first response is actually pretty great. It's manual testing. And there are other good suggestions like automated testing, screen reader testing, and also super important, user testing. But you can also kind of ask Copilot to dig in a little bit more. So we're going to put this prompt into the Slack, and we'll link to it on the YouTube video when that comes out. But here's a prompt that we give, And this prompt's accomplishing a lot. It's telling the AI to act as a coach, a subject matter expert, and specifically pointing to the WCAG and asking for suggestions to fix the code. And we got really jealous of everybody doing live demos.
Yeah, that's improvised, but
yeah.
we're going to show you how it actually works.
Yeah.
Because
so
it was part of the workshop that we did.
Yeah. Nothing like demoing a large language model on stage. So I have the prompt here, and this is a contact page. Actually, I'll show it to you real quick. You know, one of my favorite things. This was our demo for the workshop, and this is the contact page. It's really inaccessible. Some of it's visible, a lot of it is invisible to just the naked eye. So we're going to go ahead and ask Copilot, and it's going to come up with this really rad step-by-step plan. And then I'll just scroll up a little bit so we can see. So it's like looking for form labels and keyboard navigation. It's giving us the code it's suggesting to change. We can hit a magic button and it zips over to the code. But one of the interesting things is it didn't catch everything. So like I can follow up with, what about the H tags? And it'll be like, oh yeah, those are important. And you totally used them wrong. So I'm going to revise that code yet again and give you kind of the proper H tags, which is really important for screen readers. So yeah, this was a demo of like seeing how Copilot and Copilot Chat kind of specifically here can help you.
What about the magic button?
Oh, the magic button? Should I hit the magic button?
Yeah, we discovered the magic button yesterday on the workshop. And I think we have to be very careful with this.
Yeah, so if you just hit that, see, I'm one of these curmudgeonly Vim users, so VS Code's a whole new world for me. Look at that. So it's actually throwing it all in with a kind of nice diff and applying all the changes for you.
Yeah, we have to be very careful with this because yesterday we noticed that Copilot added ARIA label, and we know that we have to be very careful with ARIA labels and we have to test everything manually. So yeah, it's a magic button, but use it carefully.
Yeah, and we should also just say like this prompt here, like this isn't Copilot specific. You can use this with any of your large language models. You know, we're not here to sell products for the company that we're not speaking for. So that's just a handy tool. And so here's a list of what AI tools can do. You know, it can suggest accessibility testing, help with linting, help with writing tests. So yesterday in the workshop, we popped open some automated tests and we saw some suggestions that Copilot made to help us write our tests to ensure that our website was accessible. It can suggest alt text for images, and it was pretty great because there were a lot of photos of cute dash-ins, which I love, but none of them had alt tags. And it suggested like, here's a dash-in jumping over a log. I'm like, that makes me happy. It should make everyone happy. It can describe spoken content into text, which benefits those hard of hearing. It can proofread for language considerations, like all that stuff I talked about earlier. But some of the stuff it can't do, it can't manually test these interfaces. If you ask the AI to translate something, I would really hope that you would ask someone who is a speaker of that language if the translation is correct. I think we've all heard horror stories of people using large language models in really embarrassing ways. So AI does not address the emotional and psychological aspects of accessibility, such as making sure content is inclusive and respectful of all users. It's a good start, but it doesn't do it all. And it's pretty unaware of larger contextual errors. So when we're working on GitHub Copilot, we recommend that you think of yourself as a lead developer who's working with more junior developers. I know that other speakers like to ask for a raise of hands. So Who here lets their interns deploy to production on their first day without a code review?
There is someone.
Did you raise your hand? If you thrive in chaos, go work with that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. As the lead developer, it's your responsibility to verify information that is provided by the AI and ensure that it meets all of your requirements. Oops, hit the wrong button. Cool. And so, like, AI can really assist with this first part of like this three-part chain, which is to help make things compliant. But it's really up to you to make things compliant and usable. And then compliant, usable, and joyful is this final step. So, you know, if you're writing your website about your small batch artisanal mustard recipe, you know, AI can't make that joyful. That's up to you and your real passion for mustard.
Yeah, and I think we have to work with disabled people more and kind of work on this concept that disability is something that you should not hide or overcome. So this quote is from Holly. It's one of my favorite disability bloggers from Life of a Blind Girl. And what she says is that if something is accessible, she feels empowered, she feels independent, she feels confident. And it gives her a huge sense of achievement, which I think a lot of us can do if we think about making something as little as describing the images or something as big as actually meeting many requirements and make our products accessible. So yeah, what we do is to give people freedom, which without accessibility wouldn't be possible. Yeah. And I think that's it.
Yeah, if you have any questions or anything, come find us or ping us on Slack. So thanks.
Thanks.